Welcome to Film It Now. This is a special episode, Mando Mondays. We're going to be doing this every week on Mondays following a new episode of The Mandalorian. Brian, you just finished season 1, right?
Yeah, I just binged the entire thing on a Saturday.
Dude, okay, so before we get into episode 9, or chapter 9, episode 1 of season 2, give me your quick 1-minute review of season 1.
I would say I really love that it's shot in a way and presented in a way that it's kind of like a sci-fi western. You know, like The Mandalorian is I would say it's like Clint Eastwood meets Star Wars.
Yeah.
The Baby Yoda, I still don't know if it's actually Baby Yoda. It seems of the same species. The characters in the show were fantastic. I was super sad. No spoilers, right? No spoilers?
No, this is a spoiler. Yeah. Just fair warning, this is spoiler heavy. We don't hold back on this show. So if you haven't watched the show, why are you here?
I'm going to say rip the reprogrammed drone that was programmed to kill Baby Yoda, but then saved him and saved everybody.
Yeah, IG-11.
Yeah, and then rip Quill, who was the man. I loved his statements. This is the way. No. I have spoken. I have spoken. I have spoken. I love that. That's like his period or his conclusion to like everything that he says. It makes it like that much more epic when he states things.
It's good. I personally loved season 1. My favorite thing about it is it kind of reminds me of video game storytelling. I know a lot of people who were like, man, they didn't like, there were only like 4 episodes that really cover the main story, and then he just goes off on these other little quests. I'm like, yeah, but like that's what video games are like. You have your main story, but then you have all these side quests that you go do.
Yeah.
And it's also kind of just what their lives are like. They're distracted by other little jobs. I mean, he's a bounty hunter, and he just went and did jobs, and that's what I wanted to see from the show, and that's exactly what we got.
Yeah, it very much reminded me of, if anybody has played Fallen Order, it reminded me of like the main character going on their own side quests. Like, there's one episode specifically where Mando goes and he meets up and regroups with like a band of outlaws, and they end up betraying him and leave him stranded within a jail cell of this. That is one of my favorite episodes. The cinematography on that, the simplicity of the set design. I think I was watching a BTS of it, and I think they built like one T-shape set, and then they just kept reusing it, like different camera angles, just slightly adjusting the lighting, and the way it was shot makes it feel like they're on this big ship, but they shot it in 2 tubes. I loved how it was lit and how it turned into a thriller episode, essentially, where Mando is hunting down
it was
every
like kind of
character.
like a horror film.
It was,
especially when the lights went red, and there's that one scene where he's coming up on Bill Burr, and the lights are like flickering, and Mando's like slowly moving closer and closer to him,
and he
bam,
disappeared.
He's right behind him.
He disappeared, then enters frame. I love that so much, and
it was so well done.
It did remind me of Aliens in a way with that off and on effect of the lighting. It just made it super, super cool.
Yeah.
And when I noticed that because I totally forgot that Bill Burr was in this episode, I think I just loved seeing him, and his character was hilarious.
I love his crack when the guy's like, he said, oh, he's an Imperial sharpshooter, and then Mando goes, that doesn't mean much, and Bill Burr turns around, and he's like, I wasn't a stormtrooper, wise ass. Like, they crap on how bad stormtroopers are at shooting. Even at the beginning of the finale, where the 2 scout troopers are sitting on their bikes and they're trying to shoot something on the ground and they can't hit it. Like, they're 10 feet away from it and they can't hit it, and they just shake their guns like, oh, their guns are the problem.
Yeah, I love that they like sprinkle those little Easter eggs in there that the Star Wars audience will understand, and just shitting on those stormtroopers because they can't hit anything.
Oh, man, it's so great. All right, so that's enough for season 1. Let's dive into season 2, episode 1, chapter 9, The Marshal. I love this episode. I really like that they went with an hour-long episode for this. I think my biggest complaint about season 1 is that they did short 20, 25-minute episodes, with the exception of the finale, which I think was maybe 40 or 45 minutes.
Yeah, it did shift between like 30 and 40 minutes.
Yeah, and so this one being 55, almost an hour long, I thought was great. It stuck true. They really doubled down on the Western feel of the show. And I love that. I love just kind of like he's going on a little quest into the small town. It's got a lot of classic Western tropes, like you have your townsfolk working with, the bad guys. That they don't get along, but then they kind of have to come together and work together for a common cause, which you see a lot in Western movies with cowboys kind of having to team up with Native Americans for.
And you also see like these
stuff.
epic wide shots. Then you also have there's a sound effect that always plays. It's like a flute, like a very deep flute.
Yeah,
and it plays throughout each episode as kind of like maybe it's a presentation of character, but what's interesting about older westerns is that usually someone has a harmonica or an instrument, and that tone is an identification of that character.
Yeah,
and you can see that in Mandalorian as well.
There's a good behind the scenes in the Disney Galleria on Disney Plus. It's like an 8-part series where they dive into the making of The Mandalorian, and the episode on music's really great. The composer's got this, like, it looks kind of like an oboe, but it's shaped differently, and it's not I don't know, it's nothing like I've ever seen before, and that's what he uses to get that main theme, that really deep flute sound. I forget the name of it. I need to look up what that instrument is, but it's pretty dope.
Yeah,
I like that they use that cue constantly throughout the show.
Yeah, I like when filmmakers take that next step in creating an identity for the character through sound as well as just visuals.
Yeah, I agree. Well, let's talk Easter eggs. Before we hopped on, you asked me a specific question. So I don't know how many people are going to know this, but
yeah, so my question was on season 2, episode 1, the sheriff of the town, I believe his character name is Cobb
Vanth.
Right?
Yeah.
He has a specific Mandalorian armor, and I thought it was Boba Fett. Is it Boba Fett armor?
It's Boba Fett's armor. There's a lot of cues to it. I mean, it's a lot more worn, but when he puts the helmet down on the table, there is a bullet, not a hole, but a dent right here on the forehead. That's exactly where Boba Fett has it. All the color schemes are the same. So it was funny because when he walked up, I was like, oh shit. There's rumors that Boba Fett was going to be in the show this season.
Yeah.
And so when he walked in to the doorway in that first shot where they reveal him, I thought, is this Boba Fett? But then you look at him, it's like the armor doesn't fit. Like he's kind of like taller and slimmer than Boba Fett, and this armor doesn't fit him, so that can't be Boba Fett. And then of course he takes the helmet off, which I thought was a great moment when he takes that helmet off and they show it hit the table. The way Mando like jumps back, like, are you serious? Because Mandalorians don't take off their helmets. I thought was a great moment. They do such a good job with conveying emotion through the Mandalorian without any facial expressions. It's all through body language, which is great. So in the Aftermath book, which is one of the first books that they released leading up to The Force Awakens, it covers the immediate aftermath of the fall of the Empire and the explosion of the second Death Star. And a lot of the stuff that he says, Cobb Vanth is actually in the book. And a lot of the stuff that he says about the mining guilds and people trying to, take over and really their quest for power, all that stuff is in the book. And he actually gets Boba Fett's armor in the book. He gets it differently than he does in the show. But what's very interesting is the very last shot of the film. Did you recognize that actor?
I did not. The one who...
At the very end.
Yeah, in the middle of the desert, and he sees Mandalorian leaving, and then he turns to camera for a second.
Yeah.
Who is that?
So that actor is the actor who played Jango Fett in Attack of the Clones. And if you remember back to that episode, they specifically say that Jango Fett requested a clone for himself that was unaltered, and that was Boba Fett. So that's Boba Fett. Like that was the reveal. That was the reveal at the end of episode 1.
It's a clone 2. Boba Fett. Okay.
It was a cloned Jango Fett. Yeah. So as soon as so it was funny because, when he walked up, when Cobb Vanth first walks in, it's like, is this really how they're going to show Boba Fett? And then it's a different guy. I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? Boba Fett died. Because fans have always wanted Boba Fett to survive, right? There's always these theories, like kind of how Mando gets eaten by the beast and blasts his way out. Everyone's like, Boba Fett could do that. Boba Fett could just blast his way out of there, right? But of course, there was never any anything that's there was some lore back in early Legends before Disney took over that Boba Fett did survive.
So that I'm super excited to see what they're going to do with this character in the next few episodes. Is he going to hunt Mando? Is he going to try and get the armor back?
It seems like he wants the armor back. But yeah, so when that guy turned around and I was like, oh, mother, like that's awesome how they just reveal, like they kind of throw you off the trail, like, oh no, like here's Boba Fett's armor, but maybe Boba Fett actually died because his armor was picked up by Jawas, which they pick up scrap metal. So, my assumption is they tore it off of a dead body, or the Sarlacc dies and then they gut it for all the parts that it's eaten, whatever. But then revealing that Tamira Morrison, the actor who played Jango Fett in the show, I mean, it's either, it has to be him. It would have to be Boba Fett because all the other clones are really old because they age twice as fast. So by Return of the Jedi, they're all really, really old dudes. So to see him at this age, there's no one else it could be but Boba Fett.
I really enjoy when they craft stories and the audience, the fans, are waiting for something, and they throw something like that into the picture, because only hardcore Star Wars fans or people who followed throughout the entire series will really catch on that. Like for me, I've seen them. I saw them a while back, Attack of the Clones, but I didn't recall that specific actor at that point of watching that episode.
It's interesting too. I was wondering if they were gonna pick Tamira Morrison to play Boba Fett, or the kid who played the young Boba Fett in episode 2, Daniel Logan. He's like 35 now or something, and he could probably easily play the Boba Fett. But it makes more sense because in one of the special editions of the original trilogy, they took Tamira Morrison, the guy who played Jango Fett, they took his voice and they redubbed all of Boba Fett's voiceovers in 4, 5, and 6 with Tamira Morrison's voice. So it makes sense that they would pick him to play Boba Fett in the show. I'm curious.
Going back to what you said about how they display, because the Mandalorian is just masked the entire time. I love how they're able to use the tone of his voice to portray emotion. Yeah. Even towards the end of season 1, when the drone is helping him, right, and he's like, I've never taken my mask off, no one has seen my face, and the robot's like, it doesn't matter because I'm not a living creature. Yeah. And then he's like, why are you sad? It's like, I'm not sad. It's like, I analyzed your voice and you're sad.
Yeah.
I just love that.
They do such a good job with the characters in this film, like character development, the relationship between all the characters. I said film, but this show, it's great. This is everything I wanted the sequel trilogy to be. Like, they're Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. I think they really understand what fans want and how to give it to them, but also how to subvert expectations and keep the surprises coming. Like, Boba Fett's a perfect example of that. Like, they know fans want Boba Fett back, and they make you think, oh, maybe Boba Fett's back, and then they kind of throw you off the trail, and it's like, oh, maybe he actually did die, but here's his armor, and that's cool. And at the very end, they're like, oh, wait, hey, wink, Boba Fett is back.
It's like a psych out and then another psych out on top of that.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
I'm curious to see what they're going to do with Boba Fett's character now. As I have a feeling he's not going to show up for a few more episodes now. I feel like that's one of those reveals they do, and they don't come back to it for a few episodes. It's interesting. In episode, I think it's episode 5 of season 1, the one where they go to Tatooine and he helps that younger gunslinger hunt down a bounty. At the end of the episode, someone comes to get her, and the sound of the boots and the look of the boots, people were like, "Those are Boba Fett's boots." And I watched this new episode of season 2 back to see if Cobb Vanth had Boba Fett's boots on, because I couldn't tell. It didn't look like he did, so I almost wonder if that is like just kind of like some subtle production design or costume design that they did to hint that maybe Boba Fett is back. I don't know. I'm curious.
If they did, I mean, that would be a super detailed kind of approach where, hey, let's bring those original sound effects and just hint at the sound of that. And because the thing about sound is it also triggers an emotional response, and it triggers you. It brings you back to that particular moment, especially. It gets you like a visceral reaction. It's similar to how like if you listen to a song that you haven't listened to that you used to listen to all the time back in middle school, it brings you back to that moment. Right?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on is the world better now that the New Republic has formed and the Empire has fallen? Because there's an interesting idea that's brought up where it seems like this is the new Wild West. People just get killed, or for instance, the town in season 2 episode 1, they celebrate when the Empire's defeated and the second Death Star explodes. But as soon as that happens, they're in the bar and they get invaded by miners, and they nearly get slaughtered. It's a massacre, and Cobb manages to escape and come back and kills them all.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Like you dive into the political nature of the show. I think whenever any government is overthrown, you are going to have these power vacuums that people are going to try to come up and seize power. And so is the world better? Probably not immediately. It's probably honestly worse immediately, because there's going to be all these little factions breaking out and people at war with each other trying to gain power.
It's the same thing that in season 1, towards the last episodes, Gideon also brings this up. He says like, or no, not Gideon, the guy who originally gives the Mandalorian.
Oh yeah, I can't remember the character's name, but it's
Herzog.
Yeah, Werner
Herzog's
Herzog.
the character,
yeah.
And he essentially says, like, is it better now? Is the world better now that the Empire has been gone? And he poses this argument that the Empire brought prosperity and commerce to towns and provided structure, whereas the New Republic has come in and there's no order to things. It's just trade. There's no currency. Like this is very all over the place. So I guess in Revolution there's always going to be a give and take to how things are restored, like how an order is put back in place.
I don't know, we'll see. But overall, I give this episode an 8 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. I think the only thing that keeps me from giving it a 10 out of 10 is like, if I think this episode's perfect, then what am I going to say if there's another episode that I think's better?
I'll give it a 7.5. I would say my favorite episode thus far is still the one where they go and they group up with the outlaws and they go to the ship. I would say that's my favorite episode.
I think my favorite episode's the finale of season 1. It's funny. It was the funniest episode in my opinion. Great humor at the beginning, and then also just the emotional weight, and then the payoff of IG-11 taking his helmet off, and he's like, "I'm not a living creature." All of the story elements that they'd been building up had great payoffs in that episode. But yeah,
those payoffs make it so important. They're so important, and they also give your audience a sense of like conclusion, a sense of relief that the full picture has come back in full circle. Versus the sequels, where I feel like a lot of a lot of plots that were put in place just were thrown by the wayside and they were never fully completed. I left the theaters watching the sequels unsatisfied with the conclusion of that story.
I'm with you there, man. Well, anyway, I think that'll be it for this episode. I want to keep these pretty short, but overall, I mean, right now, this is currently my favorite show on television, and I wish that I could binge all 8 episodes right now, but I am kind of glad that it gives me something to look forward to every Friday.
Yeah, same here. I hope, if they approached it like Netflix, I would binge it as well. I would just watch it an entire night.
Oh, I would too. But anyway. All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening and watching. Thank you to Diego Chi for our great intro and outro music. And if you want to support the podcast, visit us on anchor.fm. And remember, just go out there, film it now.